Welcome back to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, and today we are bringing you a special episode. It's a live panel that I had the privilege of hosting for the National Dairy Shrine Young Professionals Luncheon at the 2025 World Dairy Expo. You're going to hear real experiences from 3 dairy industry leaders, how they navigated their own career paths, and what they look for now as managers and decision makers building out their teams. From genetics to media to marketing, this panel offers authentic insights as to what it takes to stand out in a highly competitive job market and make dairy not just a job, but a career. If you are someone in the early stages of your career or at any stage in that path, this episode is for you. All this and more here today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. And so these 3 individuals that are joining us today, Brian, Kylene, and Amanda, they were not random selections to speak with you. They were specifically chosen as I was thinking about who were people that I'd known throughout my career and throughout being involved in the industry. I've seen them grow into their own careers. I've seen them diversify. I've seen them change. But ultimately, I've watched them lead. And so you have special access today to these 3 leaders in the dairy industry to learn about how they got to where they're at. We'll take a few steps to hear their stories, and we'll also have the opportunity to tap into them for questions that you will have as well. And so I'm going to hand a mic up to our 3 panelists in just a moment here. And first, what we're going to have you do is just give us a snapshot of where your career has taken you, because believe it or not, these 3 individuals once upon a time sat in the seats that you were in. We're just coming off a collegiate judging contest, we're college students, and now fast forward a few years, here they are in the room with us today. So Brian, we'll let you give that a start.
Hey, well, thank you, Peggy. So I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I got the really cool opportunity to spend that first summer after graduating in Europe. We spent quite a bit of time on 4 different dairies in Ireland, Germany, and Italy. Really learned a lot about international agriculture at that time. From there, I came back and I was a herd manager on 3 different dairies for about 2.5 years. After that, I had a very short stint with ABS breeding cows. After that, I was hired at formerly East Central Select Sires, now Central Star Cooperative, here in Southeast Wisconsin, running matings for about 300 customers here in Southeast Wisconsin, mating about 50,000 cows a year. I did that for about 4.5 years, and then in 2018, was hired by Select Sires Incorporated, moved down to Columbus, Ohio. I was hired to help lead the design of mating programs, our bull search tools on our website, as well as some other genetic consulting programs. In April of 2024, was promoted to the manager of applied genetic strategies, where I now continue to help lead the design of those genetic consulting programs, do a lot of training and implementation for those tools. I also manage all of our global genomic testing partnerships with Zoetis and a French company, La Logina, and recently started managing a team of genetic support specialists who help run and facilitate those programs for customers around the world. So I feel very blessed to be where I am today and had a lot of opportunities come my way, and I'm excited to share more of that with you today.
Beautiful. Thanks, Brian. All right, we'll move over to you, Kylene.
All right. I am also a UW-Madison graduate. I majored in dairy science and life science communication. I think they were still calling it egg journalism back in that day. There was emphasis programs in the majors then, and I was an international emphasis, and I had an experience to go to Costa Rica when I was an undergrad. And then after I graduated, I wanted to extend the opportunity to travel abroad and actually worked for international ag programs in Mexico for the UW. When I came back, I knew I had to find a career or find something for a job, and actually was hired by ABS to fill a temp role for a maternity leave. And that grew to 10 years after that. I stayed with ABS, and then I left and worked for filament marketing after that and worked with all livestock clients. Had tremendous time working there, and then went back to ABS and worked in a similar role in global marketing. And most recently was hired in January by Hoard's Dairyman and served as the new managing editor. And same as Brian said, I'm excited to share what I've been able to experience and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Kylene. And Amanda.
Unlike Brian and Kylene, I jumped the border and I went to school at the University of Minnesota, but grew up on a dairy farm in Monroe, Wisconsin, just south of Madison here. So after I graduated from college, I spent the first half of my career in marketing communications at agencies in the Milwaukee area. First, starting off at Charleston Orwig, Mike Opperman was actually the first person that hired me out of school. So it's fun to start to see some of your early career connections start to come full circle, which we'll talk a little bit about here today as well. My first client that I worked on and worked with was Pfizer Poultry. Pfizer Animal Health does not exist anymore, nor does the company that the first internship that I had either. So that gives you a little bit of idea of how long I've been in my career. So started working a little bit more in the dairy space with L-Pharma and started to learn about new opportunities with Pfizer while I was still working on the Pfizer Poultry account, dairy at Beta Rudder. And I transitioned to Beta Rudder to be a part of the Pfizer dairy account, was a part of the initial public offering where they split off from Pfizer and became Zoetis. So after the first part of my career, I decided to change directions and stayed in marketing communications, but more on the corporate side. For 3 years, I worked at Lallemand Animal Nutrition. There, I led the ruminant additive portfolio as well as the marketing communications team for North America. That's where I got some of my international experience. Not quite as abroad as these two, but had to work quite a bit with global colleagues and learn international markets and had an opportunity to travel international quite a bit as well. And now for the last 5 years, I've been at Cargill Animal Nutrition, and most recently, Diamond V is a part of Cargill. And as of about 2 years ago, I now lead their strategic marketing team and strategic marketing initiatives for North America.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. And as you started to see with these panelists that we have today, each of them represent something a little bit different. We have those that have been involved in the genetics industry that has now become really more of an IT role. We have Kylene, who had involvement in the genetics industry as well, but from the marketing side, and now has circled back to really the roots of her college major of journalism as editor for Hoard's Dairyman, and Amanda, who has made her way through the marketing world from corporate to agency to where she's at today, and some diversity along the way. So interesting paths that these three have been on and international experiences that they were able to encounter along the way as well. And so the next question that I have for you is, when you think back about the first 5 years of your own career, when you think back about what it was like to be where these students in this room are headed right now, what was the biggest challenge that you faced in those first 5 years?
So I really like this question because when I was probably towards the end of my 5 years here, but I was hired at East Central Select Sires to go out and make cows. So I worked with customers all throughout Southeast Wisconsin, but went through a couple weeks of training. And the first day that I went out by myself, went to a farm, and it was a interesting setup with the farm, and I knew it wasn't going to go very well. But he called my boss after I left there and said, "This guy's never allowed on our farm again." And I tell this story because for some people or in some situations, it may seem like a logical thing to say, maybe this isn't the career for me. Maybe I should look in a different direction. But I didn't let that get me down, and I just kept going. And within a few short years, I was leading and teaching people how to do the job that I was doing, and now I get to build the programs that they run. But for me, it was dealing with the adversity and the understanding that failure is a necessary piece of growing and learning. We talk about it now at Select Sires that we don't want to think of it as failure. We want to think of it as falling down. When we're little kids, we fall down many, many times, and we just get up and keep going, and we don't even think about how many times we fell down. That's how we should approach failure, and think of it like we're falling down. It is a necessary step that we need to take in order to learn and keep growing into the future.
And Brian, before you pass the mic, when you think back on that moment, what was it that got you back up?
I think for me, I always had a passion for helping farmers make their cows better. I remember I talked about that in an internship interview when I was in college. I said I want to help people make their cows better. And I knew that, this one situation, this one day wasn't going to define who I was or change what I wanted to do and what I wanted to share with my customers and the people that I worked with. So it was staying true to that and true to myself and staying on that path.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. That's a great one. And Kylene, what was it for you?
I just said to these guys, my first 5 years feels like a long time. But what I learned was I got into a role and I was working for udder care support and marketing support and sales support with ABS. And they have a tremendous udder care product line that's very important to the business, but it's not the number one product. Obviously, nobody thinks of ABS and thinks of udder care. I learned a lot and got the opportunity to travel across the country. I knew I wanted to get back into the core business and the genetic side of the business. So my learning or advice is if there's a company that you are, very interested in working with and it's not exactly the fit for you, you can get your foot into the door and move around, especially in larger companies or even at smaller companies for that matter. So that was, I think, a challenge where I felt like I was, you're working on a product that's the second in line for a company. And that was where I wanted to go with, something that was a bit more of their main focus. So that was my learning.
Thank you. And Amanda?
We're kind of coming into a interesting job market now. And at the time that I graduated in 2009, it was a very challenging job market. I was interviewing and often falling second to communications professionals who had 20 years of experience when I had 3 years of internships. And so I had to start kind of expanding my horizons and being willing to try new things. So that's my advice for this group here. And something that was really challenging for me was to kind of look outside the normal and some of the careers that I thought was the right path for me. Had I not opened the door and learned a little bit more about agencies, I don't think that there's any way I would be where I'm at today because of the connections that I've made throughout my career. So be willing to challenge yourself and try new things.
That's a good one too, Amanda. Thank you for sharing that. And I have another question for you here. When you really look back, what do you believe was the most beneficial action you took when you were in the seats that these students are in right now that really set you up for success in the future?
For me, that's a really easy one. Take advantage of all of the internship and professional development opportunities that you can. That's the one chance that you have to really try different jobs and see what fits you well, what your strengths are, maybe what some gaps might be in your professional development. I had a summer internship every year from my freshman year through my senior. My very first one was actually with Miss Peggy here. We grew up in the same county, but we were actually Fort Dodge sales interns together. And that's the summer I learned that I was good at sales, but I did not want to do sales. The next summer, I had internship in communications at Uplevel Dairy. And that's where I really started to learn that communications is the area that I wanted to kind of further pursue in my professional career. So take advantage of those. Even when in those career fairs at school, use them to build your skills, develop your resume, have those conversations, take yourself outside of the comfort zone. I was pushed to do that my freshman year, and that's actually how I ended up with that internship.
Ooh, okay. And I want to camp out on something you just said there, Amanda. You talk about using those career fairs. What you didn't say is I went to the career fair to get an internship or a job. You said use that to build your skills and create connections. And Kylene, let's move on to you.
Well, echo the putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. It sounds very, very cliche, but it's really true. And I will say specifically going to live in Mexico was I was definitely outside of my comfort zone. I can remember walking through Chicago O'Hare security. I cried through the entire security line until I got on the plane and most of the way on the flight. So I was definitely putting myself out there, and it was a fantastic experience. I stopped crying when I got to Mexico, but that was definitely outside my comfort zone. I didn't know a single person. I didn't know the people I was living with. I didn't know anyone. But opening the doors of having opportunities, it's all the cliche. So that's my answer is just really put yourself outside of your safety bubble.
Yes, and sometimes that could take you all the way to Mexico. Brian.
For me, understanding what I was passionate about and talking about that passion, building a network of people who understood what I was passionate about. I had the opportunity to go to the YDLI conference and with Amanda, and a single conversation there led to me being hired at Select Sires, which has now led to getting to go see 15 different countries over the last 8 years, and really building that network even more, and getting to do things that I never thought I would have the opportunity to do, such as judging a show in Japan. So I think building that network and figure out what it is that you're passionate about and tell people about it. You never know. You could be sitting at a table with someone today and you say the right thing that perks up their interest, and the next thing you know, you've got an interview for your dream job or your dream opportunity. So build that network, be passionate, and talk about what you're passionate about.
And Brian, you just touched on an organization that was really pivotal to your own development as a leader and personally, Young Dairy Leaders Institute, YDLI. I'm curious for the three of you, what other programs, tools, resources have helped you to grow both professionally and in your leadership skills?
So YDLI was probably the start of my professional personal development journey. And since then, having the opportunity to kind of take on more leadership within Select Sires, we are really pushing a lot of our people to engage in personal development, leadership development, because the more that you can keep that at the forefront of your mind, the more that you're going to pass that to the people that you're around, and it's going to make it easier to lead yourself. We say know yourself to lead yourself. If you can understand what's going on with you and know yourself, you can share that with others. So we are doing several different leadership groups and leadership cohorts and sessions. I also think it's very important. This is something I picked up in the last 2 years or so, but reading books is something that not many people do anymore. But I really think, again, that it helps imprint those things in your mind and keeps you actively thinking about leadership and how to encourage others to follow in those footsteps.
Oh, okay, Brian. What's one book that has changed your perspective and had the greatest impact on you recently?
My favorite from the last year was Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. A lot of interesting stories and perspectives about different companies that we may know throughout the world, things that you can learn from different kind of social experiments and things. But I just think it was one of those books that really opened my eyes to what leadership can be. And it's very different for everyone. So
thank you for the recommendation. And so for those of you that are taking notes on your little notepads, Leaders Eat Last, add that to your list of books to read or listen to. And Amanda, let's hear from you.
So Brian mentioned that we did YDLI together. We were in the same graduating class. I would mimic a lot of what he said as far as that kind of being the springboard for my professional development and really starting to establish my comfort in public speaking. I grew up public speaking in 4-H, Junior Holsteins, but it was always prepared public speaking. And nothing prepares you for being in front of a bunch of peers within your organization or leadership as much as like YDLI did. But beyond that, I would say we've talked a lot about building your network. you've heard from all of us that we're all interconnected in our career paths somehow. That building your network starts here and it starts now. Think about, who do you know in the industry? Who might you look up to that you can build a mentor relationship with? Those mentors are so beneficial and so helpful for you as you're starting to think about your career path and what are some areas that you might need to grow in and diversify yourself, or opportunities out there in the industry. And in addition to a mentor, the second thing I would say is your sponsor. A sponsor is someone who is usually a little bit more senior to you, but watches you throughout your career, and they help to build you up. They help to get your name out. My sponsor is someone that I got to know very young in my career while I was at CO, and now has hired me twice in my career. And again, I wouldn't be where I am today or in this seat today without starting to build that network.
All right, Amanda, you talk about mentors and sponsors. What's the difference?
Good question. So the way that I think about it, when you think about a mentor is usually someone that is not necessarily close to you in your age and your career, but maybe someone that you look up to, but they help to educate you, kind of help you guide you in your career path, identify opportunities for you. Versus a sponsor is typically, like I said, someone that's a little bit more senior to you. They are watching you in your career, and they sponsor you in the sense of they promote you in the industry, within your organization, within your career development. They help you identify opportunities to grow and get your name out there too, so that you continue to grow within your career path too.
Wow, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, Amanda. And the key takeaway, once again, the mentor and sponsor roles of people that you can really invite into your own personal life and career journey along the way. And in just a moment here, folks, we're going to pivot over to some questions with these panelists that really drive into the process that they go through when they're looking for their next team members, when they're doing the hiring and sorting through the resumes and looking for their next interns and full-time employees. And so I'm going to ask this question to three of you. What is your company looking for in their next new hire? Amanda, go for it.
I can start. I'm probably the one that just hired most recently. In fact, yeah, an accepted offer over the weekend. But Cargill and Diamond V are always hiring and working to identify new professionals to build up our organizations. In fact, we invest quite a bit in young professionals. We have both summer internship opportunities as well as career development professionals, where it's a full-time role, but you actually have spent 12 to 18 months experiencing different functions within Cargill, from production to marketing to sourcing. And so you kind of start to understand a little bit more about kind of all the different facets within our organization and maybe where the best fit is for you. But when we talk about the best fit, having a skill set that fits that specific role is really important. But what's even more important to us is a cultural fit. Brian talked about books and how they've been important to him. One of the books that we rely on quite a bit, or we kind of hang our hats on, is called The Ideal Team Player. And it talks about teammates that are humble, hungry, and smart. Humble from the perspective that you're willing to learn, but you also are, take credit when credit is due, but also share that credit across your team as well. You're hungry. You have a passion to learn, take on new challenges. And then smart, not only from an IQ perspective, but people smarts, making sure that you can read the room, you can make connections, and you build your network within the organization as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. And Kylene, how about you?
That was really, really great advice. I would say that. I would say that we don't hire a lot at Hoard's, and we have a small team, but an example of, fitting in a need of a skill set that might not be a perfect fit on the surface. So I guess I'll say, don't be afraid to apply for something that you might think, oh, I'm not a perfect fit for this. Okay. They might be looking for something that is a niche that you bring. Don't think I'm not qualified, and just get your name out there, get your resume in front of people, get the interviews, and there might be something that matches up that you didn't anticipate.
I want to build on what Kylene said a little bit, because I know when I was first graduating college, all of my friends, we put all this time and effort into, I'm going to get this great career. I'm going to graduate. Day one, I'm going to start this great career. The reality is, within about 6 months, about 95% of the people I graduated were on to their second or third role already by that time. And all of these companies understand that if we're hiring young people, they may not have the full skill set that they need to have in order to be successful in that role or with the company. So I think Select Sires is very similar to Cargill. We really want to see that cultural fit. We really want to see people who are passionate and true to themselves, people who are honest and have integrity, and people who are willing to change and adapt, as well as keep learning. I think it's really, really critical that we have this mentality of always wanting to find something new, take something out of every conversation. I'm learning some books and I'm learning some things from this conversation as well today. So I would say just remember that these companies want to hire you for who you are and what you can bring to the company, not necessarily what you offer today. A lot of companies in agriculture today want to retain people who have agricultural experience because we are losing a lot of people to other industries. So we would really prefer to keep farm kids and people who grew up with agriculture in agriculture and develop that along the way. So I really think it's a good advice to not be afraid to apply to a role that you may think is above you, because the fact is that they'll train you to do whatever you need to do. But if you can present yourself really well and be a cultural fit, you're in.
And I'm going to add in a couple 2 cents from my own experience on this one as well. So some of my background involved working for family-owned media companies in the past, and now I own my own media company. So I've gone from being someone who worked for others to now being someone who works for myself, and in the past year have grown my own small team, and that includes the addition of a full-time employee. And when it comes to someone like me looking at who's a fit for my team, what it really came down to in my case for hiring, I'll tell you this little story because I want this to sink in. I wasn't necessarily looking to hire a full-time person, but there was a young man who was in my local network. He'd reached out to me through LinkedIn a while back, and I thought, oh yes, great, good to know you're local if I ever have the right thing that comes up. And last summer in 2024, he caught up with me at the county fair and once again said, hey, I really admire the work you're doing. I'd love to be a part of it. Well, guess what? His ability to come up to me and be bold, put himself on my radar at just the right time, ended up being that moment that ended up with him being my full-time employee a few months later. And so I share that with you because I think a takeaway for me in this case, and that it is for you too, is putting yourself on that radar, even if you don't know where it's going to go, and just having that courage and confidence to introduce yourself through LinkedIn and in person was a total game changer. But the next step of what he was able to do was he didn't just tell me what his skill set was. I brought him in on a small project and I gave him an opportunity to show me. And he blew me away with his videography skills. And so for what that's worth to you as well, I hope you take a little bit of that with you, of the value of putting yourself out there, letting people know what you are capable of. And it just might be the right fit at the right time. And so I'm going to move on to our next question here. So this question actually was one that came in when Mike was doing the registration for this luncheon. And so I want to make sure we give this one some time here. And the question is this: how do you navigate confidence versus humility in the workplace? All right, you three, who'd like to tackle this one first?
Obviously, there's a very fine line between humility and confidence. I guess my recommendation is to lean towards humility. If you ask questions rather than make statements, you are showing people in the room with you that you are there to learn, and you want to learn, and you want to learn, figure something out that you didn't know before. I've seen several times where confidence without context is just cockiness. And if you don't take the opportunity to build up your knowledge base and build the confidence up naturally, that just comes across as arrogance. And no one likes to be around arrogant people. They are not going to fit in very many companies going forward. So my recommendation is to, as you enter the workforce, think about spending 3 to 5 to 7 years in a place of, my whole thing is gaining experience and learning and figuring out about myself and what it is that I like and what I'm good at.
That was good, Brian. Hope you guys took some notes off that one. All right, Kylene.
I would go with also maybe a different angle on this of listening. I mean, just kind of saying, you learn the cliche of you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? You can listen and learn and take things in. Communication is a 2-way street. So I would say I'm taking this as as workplace communication, right? Find out what ways people like to be communicated to, and then echo that, like the body language. But I find that really rewarding when somebody wants to be communicated to in a certain way and then respond in that way. That really builds, I feel like, a lot of trust and respect, and starts to build that relationship to kind of avoid that moving to overconfidence.
Excellent. Thank you. And Amanda?
Honestly, I don't know that I have much more that I could add to what either of these two have said. But to be honest, you build your confidence through humility. You build your confidence by being humble, by accepting your failures, but learning from them. As you continue to learn throughout your career, you build that confidence to be in front of a group like this. Early on in my career, there's no way that I would have done anything like this, but I continue to have opportunities to get in front of organizations, groups within Diamond V and Cargill. And so again, just be humble, learn from your mistakes, continue to learn and grow, and that builds your confidence throughout your career.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. And I'm going to add a little nugget into this one as well. When we're navigating that area between confidence and humility, it's all about building trust in the beginning. And when you're just getting started at a new position or in your career, the most important thing you can do is build the relationship of trust with the people around you. Because guess what? If you're trying to base that relationship off of the results, that is just a tiny little portion. And we got to focus on building that base first. So for our folks out here that are applying for jobs, which you know that there's a lot of internships and jobs, top 3 tips for a candidate that's applying to be a part of your teams.
All right. Well, I'll reiterate one I said, to apply for jobs that you think you might be a fit for, even if it's not a perfect fit today. And it's the company that culturally could be the right fit. So I'm going to call that one answer. Second, don't give up if you don't hear something. Different companies have different ways of answering applicants. People get very, very busy and email boxes get very full. So don't be afraid to follow up, but don't be overly persistent. I'm trying to figure out how to strike a balance on that answer, but don't be afraid to follow up. Give some time, follow up. A third one. An interview tip, I would say, is the humble and humility point. I think I'll go back to that. The first impression that they have of you is one that, if they're interviewing a lot of people, they get one impression, right? So I would say be very humble, but also be confident in what you've accomplished. So that's my list of 3.
Those are all really, really strong suggestions. One thing that is new, I think for any young professional, is we're living in the age of AI. I did not have artificial intelligence to build my resume and write my cover letter when I was starting out my career. You guys have the advantage of that, but be sure to only leverage it as maybe a starting point or somewhere to kind of springboard yourself into that application process. My first recommendation is making sure that you're tailoring all of your applications to the specific role and to the company that you're applying to. We see a lot of copy and paste, per se, applications recently. So one way to really make yourself stand out is to make sure you tailor it. The other one I would say is when you're coming into an interview, do your homework. Know the organization as much as you can. Tailor that conversation and show that you are truly passionate about that role and genuinely interested in it. That's going to really spark the intrigue during that conversation.
Great tips. And Brian, round us out with your top 3.
Most of what I was going to say has been covered. I think one of the quickest things that I've seen during the interview process that has lost an opportunity for that person is not being professional. And there's a couple things that go into that. Dress the part. Dress how you want to present yourself. I've had people come in sweatpants and t-shirts, and while I like to wear those on the weekends too, when you're working for or applying for a job for a company, it's not appropriate to dress that way during your interview. So look professional, act professional, just like checking all the little details on your resume or your cover letter and making sure that everything is spelled correctly and that you don't have some other company's name listed on your cover letter. Those little things can make a huge difference and take you from just another, resume in the pile to one at the top of the pile. The other thing that I really have started to appreciate is when interviewees at least ask us one question. One that I've seen a lot of videos, and one that I like to encourage people to do is, what are the expectations, or what will you have needed me to do in order to say that my first year was successful? Because that shows not only that you're interested and want to know more about your potential position, but will really differentiate you from a lot of your competition just by asking those types of questions.
Another solid gold nugget. Any other advice for how to stand out in the crowd?
I'll go quickly here. There's a Nick Saban quote that goes something like, do what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, and how it's supposed to be done. If you do those things, you will automatically be in the top 25% of all employees everywhere. Answering your emails, following up on things that you're supposed to follow up on, and doing what you said you're going to do seems like a very logical thing for us all today, but when you get up in the workforce, that is not exactly how it goes. So if you want to rise and be a leader, do what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, in the way that it's supposed to be done.
Brian is full of the quotables today, but the always quotable Brian Coyne. You have a new name. All right, Kylene, how about you? What else can we do to stand out? I would say communicate. And I've said that before, but people don't know what they don't know. So if they don't know something about you, you need to communicate that. So standing out by getting yourself out there and communicating, meeting new people, putting yourself in an uncomfortable position. That's what I would say to make yourself stand out. And Amanda, take us home.
I would say build your network. Just like I'm going to kind of wrap that back around with what I started off with before. Now, if you did tailor your resume, you've got a strong cover letter, and you make it out to the top, and it's someone that we're interested in, just like I encourage you to do your homework, we're going to do our homework too. So any connections that you have within the industry that we see on LinkedIn, anyone that we see you might have worked with in the past, or maybe we're involved within a club within your college organizations. We do our homework as well. So build your network, get your own name out there, because that's going to go miles for you in the long run.
And Amanda, when you talk about doing your homework on candidates,
Is there anything you'd add about just being aware of what is out there?
Be smart. If you post it out there, even if you delete it, it doesn't go away. So just again, as you're trying to establish yourself early in your career, like I said, we do our homework. We want to learn a little bit more about who potential candidates are that we might be hiring. I would just say be smart and don't say, post, or do anything that you don't want anyone else to know about.
All right, I hope you wrote that one down too. This is your chance to ask questions to people that are hiring, that are making these decisions, that are looking at your resumes and applications and sitting across the table from you, or even virtually on an interview someday. What would you like to know from Brian, Kylene, and Amanda?
Coming back to the discussion you all had on mentors and sponsors, out of curiosity, what is the best piece of advice each of you ever received? Why did you heed it at the time or use it? And how did that manifest itself?
In the end, that being patient and letting things shake out is really what the advice was. And that actually led me going back to ABS. And I thought that, like, in hindsight, that's what the advice was. So maybe it's not direct advice, but it's implied advice.
One of the things when I was in college, my father was a dairy farmer and then managed a dairy farm. And I don't know whether he had aspirations to do other things or what, but to me, he was a farmer. When I was in college, my dad got the opportunity to go to work for VitaPlus and started really to transition to a different part of his career or a different style of career. And I saw him go on to, work with customers, have several different roles in that company, to go on to lead different groups of people and hear how different people, I got to hear how different people talked about and interacted with my dad and what they appreciated about working with him. To me, seeing him go from a dairy farmer to someone who is leading business people on a daily basis really changed my mentality about what was possible, and opened, my eyes to looking to different opportunities and approaching them in different ways. So we've heard this several times today, but for me, seeing my father go through that transition was something that really opened my eyes to what is possible in this industry. And I will tell you, the places that I've got to go and the things that I've gotten to see just over the last 10 years, I never knew were possible. And those opportunities are just going to keep changing and getting bigger and better for everyone in this room as technology evolves and we evolve as a society. So keep at it.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And Amanda?
I vividly remember this day. It was about 6 months in my time at Beta Rudder. I got an email that said I needed to watch my tone and my language. I am very much a driver. I'm an achiever. If I have a deadline, if I have a goal in mind, I'm going to get to it, and I don't care what got in the way. Ever since that conversation, it really, at that time, did I like the feedback? No, because we were going to miss a deadline, and the creative person wasn't following along with my direction and what the client wanted. But honestly, that was one thing that had really helped me kind of take a step back and kind of going back to that confidence and humility conversation. At that time, I was driving with confidence. I knew what we needed to do. I knew what the client wanted. I thought I knew what was best for the project. In the end, it's more about being humble and being a part of a team. And that team in the end is really what's going to drive the results and help get everyone to a better outcome in the end. So it really kind of comes back to, again, making sure that you're staying humble and you keep that goal in mind and always go back to that goal, but be smart about how we get there and making sure everyone is in alignment with that and that your team is coming along with you.
I'm going to jump in on this one too, Peter, because there are two special guests in the room today. One of them is my mom, Alice, And sitting next to her is Amanda's mom, Stacy. So we all go way back, but there are things that people will tell you and things that you'll remember they say. And then there are things that you will watch the people around you do, and those actions speak louder than words. And quick little story about my mom. So mom's been a dairy farmer her whole life. And when I say she has been a dairy farmer, that included being one of 5 girls, lost her dad when she was quite young, and her sisters and her mom kept the farm going over many, many years. One of the people that was very influential in that back in those early days was Stacy, my mom's right hand. And so how cool that they're here today. But if there's one thing I learned from watching my mom and watching Stacy, who went on to be a very successful dairy farmer and raised a wonderful young lady herself, it's don't give up and do what you love and love what you do. And as much as we can get wrapped up in all of the right words to put on paper, I think if you keep those 3 things in your heart, you'll find the right place and the right path. And so with that, I thank you for being in our room today, for taking this time, dedicating it to your own next steps and launching your professional careers, and hitting a big round of applause to these 3 panelists.
You just heard from Brian Coyne, Kylene Anderson, and Amanda Lichtensteiger, 3 professionals who've climbed the ranks in dairy by showing up, standing out, and leaning into their strengths, while leveraging the strengths of those around them to build out their teams. Whether you're still figuring out your first steps or already climbing the ladder, their advice is a reminder that it's not just about where you start. It's about building a career with intention and humility. Well, I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thanks again for listening to this episode of the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. If you like this one, make sure to follow, rate, review it, or share it with a friend. And as always, keep on growing, keep on learning, and up-leveling your dairy.